Pete and the Wheelers did their thing, and they got to Palmyra. Jack knew right where the cut in the reef was and knew how to get into the lagoon, and they were there waiting for us. Now, when we showed, it was a 6-day sail for us from Hawaii to Palmyra. And when we got there, very interesting, Jack and his family were already inside the lagoon, tied up, yet there was another boat had not been able to get through the cut, and it was just kind of anchored on the reef out there. We had no idea who these people were or why they were there, but it was pretty obvious that they hadn't figured out how to get in through that cut or exactly where it was. Now, what made it easy for us was we had radio communication with Jack and his group already in, and Jack knew there were a couple of landmarks on the island, like a tree and a post, and Jack said, okay, guys, what you do is you sail around until the tree lines up with the post, and then you aim straight for them. And of course he was able to be talking us through all of this to bring us through that little cut to get into the safe anchorage. Now, before we went in, we did go out to where the other boat was and, indicated them that we were going to go in. If they wanted to follow us, that would be fine. They just kind of waved us off. So we went on in, had no problem at all getting right through the cut into the protected harbor, and we tied up right next to Jack Wheeler's boat. And went about doing our ham radio things for 2 or 3 days. On the third day that we were there, the day before we were to leave for Kingman Reef, the other boat, we saw it try to sail through the cut in the lagoon and didn't make it. They ran aground on the reef.
Oof.
It was pretty bad. And we went out and it took the dinghies from our boat and Jack's boat and were able to pull them off and finally tow them in and tie them up at a pier that was left from the old Navy operations there. So they got in safely. Now, the reason I'm making the point of this is let me just continue on for a minute. Our plan was to leave the next day to go on to Kingman Reef, which we did. Jack was going to stay there all the time that we were at Kingman Reef as the backup. But a day out from when we left Palmyra, we got a call from Jack on the radio saying, guys, I'm sorry to change plans on you, but my family and I have already departed Palmyra, and we're on the way back to Honolulu. Frankly, I am worried about being on Palmyra with those people that we pulled in. And, that was it. We did our thing at Kingman Reef and, went on ultimately back to Hawaii. Now, what went on at Palmyra, though, was a bit different. A couple of days after we left, another boat pulled in that belonged to a San Diego couple called Malcolm and I think Duff Graham, Graham. It was a absolutely beautiful, sailboat. The Grahams were
from And the Sea Will Tell. You're talking about the Murders.
Yes, that's right.
Are you serious?
We were the ones that pulled them off the reef. And Vince Bugliosi went ahead and wrote the book. What made it all the more interesting, was what Jack said is these people are absolutely crazy.
Wow. Thank God they left.
Well, it was an eye-opener to us because these DxPeditions for hams are great adventures and fun things, but we would never, and stupidly so, considered the dangers and the other people who are out there that may have very different objectives than we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought back on that many, many times that we got out of there. I mean, had it been another day or two, it could have been us rather than the Grahams who got murdered.
Wow.
Yeah. But what we had discovered, and a little bit about it, and if you ever read Vince Bugliosi's book or watch the TV miniseries, and the Sea Will Tell, both by the same name. The two folks on the Iola, which was the boat we pulled off the reef, were Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns, and they were boyfriend, girlfriend, and they had 3 big dogs with them. And Buck was wanted on drug charges in Hawaii, and they had figured out, or somebody had tipped them off, that the FBI was about to get them the next day. So they sailed away in the Iola before Buck could be arrested. Stephanie mentioned to me that she had bought a book on how to navigate the day they were headed to leave. And it took them a month to get from Hawaii to Palmyra.
Oh, wow.
And they had used up all of their food and all of the fuel for the boat, which is why they tried to sail through the cut rather than come in under, motor power. And they weren't real good sailors, which is why they ended up running aground. Once we got them in, they wanted nothing to do with us, and we quickly discovered the feeling was mutual. Because they had no food, they were out collecting coconuts, and the way they collected coconuts was that Buck had a chainsaw and just lopped down coconut palms, which did not go over well with us, and particularly with Jack Wheeler, who was kind of a real ecologist, said that, that's not the way that you get coconuts. They also, the island was covered with birds, particularly terns, and even though they didn't do this while we were there, apparently after we left, they were out shooting terns with a pistol of some kind to get something to eat.
My God.
So that was their story, and they were, like in desperate shapes, really. They were out of food and water and fuel, and there they were at an uninhabited island. So I think Jack did real well of getting out of there.
Yeah.
Now, when the Grahams came in, it turns out the Grahams were not hams, but they were using ham radio to keep in touch with a couple of friends in Los Angeles, even though within Hawaii, even though they were not licensed. And all of a sudden those communications stopped. And the friends in Hawaii got worried, went to the Coast Guard, and ultimately convinced the Coast Guard to fly down over Palmyra and, search for the Grahams, see if there was anything there. And there was no sign of anybody there. And that was, pretty much for what had happened at Palmyra for a while. Meanwhile, back in Hawaii, one of the Graham's friends, several weeks later, happened to be going by one of the yacht harbors and noticed the Graham's boat there. It had been renamed and repainted. And on board were Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns and their 3 big dogs.
Right.
And they reported that, and the FBI did nail them. And the story that Walker gave was that, hey, they were great friends with the Grahams, and unfortunately the Grahams had, as they did frequently, had gotten in their dinghy and gone out fishing, and he got up one morning and found the dinghy overturned on the beach. Apparently the Grahams had been hit by a rogue wave and had been washed overboard and drowned. And because they searched for them and there was just no sign of them. So he said, then what could we do? I mean, here was the Iola, our boat that was badly damaged from its encounter with the reef. So, the only normal thing that a thinking person would do is take this fully equipped boat that the Grahams had been on and, go continue on using it. And, of course, they asked, well, then why didn't you contact the police when you got back? And he just laughed. He said, why would I? I'm a wanted man. I would never contact you. He said, we took the Iola out beyond the reef and scuttled it so it couldn't be found. And that was the story. They ended up being convicted of grand theft. Somehow they got that in. And Stephanie Stearns served a couple of years, and then they let her out. They kept Buck Walker in jail for a little bit longer, and finally let him out. He ended up being transferred to a prison outside of Sacramento. And then a couple of years after that, a couple of New Zealand scuba divers were at Palmyra, and in the lagoon they found a 55-gallon oil drum, which they pulled to the surface, and stuffed inside of that was Muff Graham's skeleton with a bullet hole through the skull.
Oof.
And that was it, but it certainly made us realize the danger of being on a place like Palmyra, which is a totally uninhabited island at the time.
Mm-hmm. So
if you, it sounds like you're familiar already with And the Sea Will Tell. If you haven't got the book, I have a copy of it here somewhere. It's worth getting because it really gives you a lot of information about what was going on the island itself.
Okay.
Bugliosi was an attorney here in Marin County, just north of San Francisco, got Stephanie Stearns off by simply saying that all of the bad stuff was done by Buck Walker. None of us on a ham expedition believed that for a moment.
Gotcha.
He did some lawyering and convinced the jury. And by the way, I am an attorney myself, or was. I'm retired now.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, it's what made this really even more fun is at the time I did this Palmyra trip, I was in law school here in San Francisco. And sitting next to me was a young lady by the name of Becky King, who turned out to be the daughter of Judge King, the federal judge in Honolulu, who heard the Buck Walker case. So,
wow.
Just the coincidences there are just all over the place. And in fact, they flew one of our guys out to Hawaii with all the photos that we had taken while we were there that showed the pictures of Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns and the Iola and stuff so that we could, positively pinpoint that they were at Palmyra at the time all the stuff had happened. So that, another little thing, and I think I still got the slides that Jim Rafferty, who was our third guy on our trip, he was the one who went out to Hawaii to testify at the trial.